Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Terry Fletcher.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and today I am not joined by Mr. Silky Smooth Voice. I am joined by Mrs. Silky Smooth Voice, one Terry Fletcher. I want to say standing in for Brian Roach, but I think you're the better half of a broadcasting duo here.
Oh, that's funny. Thank you. I'm happy to be here today.
I'm happy you're happy. There's not a lot going on in the football world right now other than, they're having a lot of these NFL meetings right now, annual meetings, discussing some rule changes. Apparently, Jesse caught it, even though I wish you could protest things in the NFL. Jeez, I wanted to protest that so bad. They're looking to change that. They're probably going to add convoluted wording to it that's not going to make any sense, and let's just hope it ends up working out for the better. But we have a few mix-match, potpourri type items on the agenda for today. I don't know, Terry, where do you want to start with all this?
Well, I think I agree with you just as far as start maybe with the meetings and some of the rule things. I know that Jesse was quoted as saying that, that's going to haunt him, that catch, no catch thing forever, because, that let's just say it would have changed that particular moment as we know it. That would have won the game against the Patriots for the Steelers. And, the likelihood that the Patriots would have seen the Jaguars and we would have seen the Titans, and we know we destroyed them the first time in the middle of the season. So I know there's a lot of what ifs there, but the likelihood would have went a lot different direction than what happened. And so I think that I can see how that haunted him. But boy, he's sure on the map now because of that.
Haunts me too. Me too. I was kicking puppies and baby puppies on my way out of Heinz Field. I was never so sick and disgusted in my life, probably about any sporting event ever in my life. I could only imagine what it felt like to actually be a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers and to be Jesse James himself. And as far as, that's got to haunt the referees too. I'm not going to lie. Referees are human too. And I don't know if any of them can, it all depends on ego. Ego gets in the way. We're going to talk about egos when it comes to players in a little bit here too. But if you don't have an ego and you've made a mistake, or you clearly feel like maybe things could have went differently, and all of the fallout and knowing that everybody knows your name and knows who made the decision, et cetera, it just does not sit well. You can't say these guys just sleep well at night with that in the back of their minds. They're people too. They want to do the best of their job, the best of their ability. The real one that bothers me is that it was called a touchdown on the field, and then Al Riveron and his team, whether it was Al Riveron or I believe there's 3 people in the command center that they have for the replays, are the ones that changed that. So even the guys on the field necessarily may have felt justified. Maybe the guy who made the call that it was a touchdown for whatever reason, and get it overturned.
That's the biggest thing that people are freaking out about is that, was catch, no catch, whatever it was. The thing is, the call on the field should not have been overturned because there was not enough evidence to overturn it. And it just seems like Ron Rivera decided, okay, well, we're going to start making up words as far as what the ground involvement is and all that kind of stuff. Even after his knee first hit, he wasn't touched. Then he reached over, and people are getting confused too with the fact that he wasn't just going down the field. He was crossing the plane without being touched. So, obviously not to rehash, but I don't think that they've actually done anything as far as clarity, because they put something out and basically still have too much subjective discussion on that number 3, where they're, first of all, you have to catch it, then 2 feet down. And then the one that was cracking me up is where they were saying, I think it was in number 3, that said, or the possibility of making a football move. It's like, what do you mean a possibility? So this line judge says, oh, he could have done it, but this one says, no, he really couldn't have. So once again, they're putting it in the hands of refs and not, letting the guys play.
They need a spirit of the game type of thing. That's actually a terminology taken from FIFA, the international governing body of for soccer or football for other people and that live around the world. Not our football as we know it. And basically within the spirit of that, what it needs to be is it is gray area judgment type deal. But it's like if this were on a playground with a bunch of kids. Does this count? I mean, that's what it really boils down to. And they're trying to say now if there's a little bit of movement on the replay is not going to overturn it. And I don't know. You just got to hope that it's for the better. At least the NFL is acknowledging this. Maybe too little, too late over the several years of this type of stuff going on back with Des Bryant and Megatron and others. Kelvin Benjamin robbed against the Patriots during the regular season, et cetera, et cetera. So with the celebrations, they righted a wrong, and you got to hope that they're going to do the same with the catch rule.
Well, I think so, and I think the one thing I feel actually pretty good about is the fact that Coach Tomlin, they said that he's one of the ones that is, because he's on the competition committee, he helps to guide the language. And, as much as he definitely knows how to be politically correct in his discussions when he's talking to the media, I think he's one of the probably more straight-spoken, men we know. So I think at least he won't make it so complicated where an average person couldn't understand it. But just moving on from the catch rule, I think the one rule that I think I've seen going back and forth, and we'll kind of move on from that, but the pass interference call. So it was, pass interference, offensive down the field, basically it's spot a foul. Well, obviously when it happens, when it's called incorrectly, as a fan or whatever you think, this is a 40-yard pass and all of a sudden they're in the red zone. And to me, the simple thing for me would be they talked about changing it to back to college rules, which is 15-yard penalty. But to me, I would just make it a reviewable call, just like they have. I know they don't do that with a lot of penalties, but they do it, for example, with 12 men on the field. And that way, at least it's reviewed if it's something like that kind of a big play. And so, keep it the same, but make that maybe a reviewable call. It can be, reviewed. So I don't know. That just to me makes a little bit more sense than, changing it to the college rules. What do you think?
It's tough. You don't want more stops in the game. I think that's where you're learning. I think that's where Major League Baseball is always trying to tweak things instead of just leaving stuff alone too. And you have all these various clocks and this and that. And the first thing is that the NFL is supposed to be, there is a clock on the replay thing. That seemed to flew out the window when it came to the Jesse James situation.
Oh yeah,
that took forever, and more than just that game. In all fairness, but they were supposed to be on the clock, and that was something they're also aware of in trying to manage too. But it's tough because there are pros and cons, but there were just so many more. I don't have the figure in front of me, but I read it somewhere. There were just so many more pass interference calls called this season than like over a span of several seasons. I want to say it was like 40 or 50 more overall.
Yeah, but think what would happen if they went and did the college one. That means that you're going to have guys that are following those wide receivers down there, and they are going to jump on them and tackle them and take the 15 yards if they switch it back to the college rule instead of take the touchdown. And so it's like that's going to cause so many more injuries and just talk about stopping the game for those 15 yards. So I don't know. I think it's a no-win. I think they need to let them just play and stop calling everything when just a player is just barely touched. But we see it called when the defensive player didn't even look back for the ball. They're totally going after the player, not the ball. And that's supposed to be what pass interference is that, and it's just crazy to me. Just they're not looking at the spirit of the rule.
Yeah, and one thing is after the fact and on film as an official, even in real time, it's difficult. You can't diagnose intent. I hate the word intent because intent means you are a mind reader. The best you can do as an official. I hate to say guess. Sometimes you see what you see with your own eyes. You definitely see somebody grab a jersey and it influences the outcome of a play. That's not guess, but some things, if you're going to do replay and you're saying intent, you're trying to guess if someone was intending to do what they were doing. Something's deliberate and blatant. Let's face it this way. Referees are there so players don't cheat. You don't want players to cheat, so then it's a fair game, and there's a definite winner and a loser. There's not supposed to be any stench of any match fixing or cheating or anything of that nature. So that's why the referees are there, and it's a very thankless job. But get rid of the things that are very deliberate in nature. Some of the other things, like I really think that when you're talking about professional football and you're talking about pass interference, very little at this level is a mistake. Everyone makes a lot of money from the owners to the trainers to make sure these guys are bigger, faster, and stronger, to the coaches to make sure that they're well coached, and the players themselves are the most talented of all football players in the world, presumably, that are on the NFL roster. So when you factor all that in, very little is a mistake. I think the biggest one that really irks me is when I see the quote feet tangled up and no pass interference call, because I think players, if I'm a defensive back and I know that pretty much I can't do anything upper body, well, I could kind of like maybe stick my feet out or my legs here, and then you get tangled up, and then by letter of law, it's not a personal or not a personal foul. I'm sorry, a pass interference call. I think that one's baloney too. I think that's like a cop out, and that's the way to get rid of it. You think of it too. Defensive players, like all the onus is on defensive players now, whether it's fines or penalties. I mean, it's all offense in the NFL, and these corners and safeties and DBs, and they're trying to defend some of these plays. In some cases, they are going to cheat because it's probably better to just grab somebody like Antonio Brown instead of getting burned and giving up 6. And then possibly a 7 or 8, depending on extra point or 2-point try. That scenario, you may be able to hold someone to a field goal. Maybe they miss the field goal. Maybe they make a boneheaded 4th down decision and don't make it and turnover on downs. So there's still probability beyond just letting somebody burn you. So I get it, and that's the reason. That's an argument against the 15-yard type of college rule. I totally agree with you on that. So. I don't know. It is a no-win situation. I just think I think it's funny. I think I mentioned this with Brian on one of the shows last week. There was an anonymous wide receiver, free agent, who was talking about whether or not to join the Ravens. And I talked about for years how Joe Flacco would just heave the ball up and it was jump ball and get the pass interference call. And that's basically what this guy said. He had an interview with somebody that they don't want your talent. They just want you to run fast down the field in a straight line and get a pass interference call. And that's what's wrong with the game. And I really don't know how you tweak that so it's balanced one way or the other, unless it's unless you can you're going to get in a lot of hot water if you have both, because if it's just like an incidental but it's still a pass interference, then maybe it's a 15-yard, and if it's something that's deliberate, blatant cheating, then maybe you go from the spot of the foul. Maybe that's the only way you can do it. If you're going to tweak it, you're still not going to make everyone happy.
Especially because I think there's all the calls that they make like that, especially ones that even if they're reviewing it, if it takes, to me, longer than 30 seconds, that means somebody's making a personal judgment call. They're not looking at the game. They're looking at, well, and it's just like, they do this in baseball too. Did it touch the glove? Did it touch the inner glove? Did it touch the back of the glove? Did it touch the web? I'm like, oh my gosh, you can't always go frame by frame unless it's about a score. If it's about a touchdown, then I get you want to cross the plane. You want to get your score. You want the tip of the ball in there. But if it's not about a score, play the game, So that to me is that's just interesting to me.
But I'm going to add one more thing there too. I don't mind the eye in the sky, the big brother, the replay officials and stuff like that, because the game is so fast. You're never going to have enough referees out there, and the more cooks you have in the kitchen, it's never good. So they already have, I think, 8 referees that are on the field, and the game is faster than ever. Every year it gets faster. You got sports science and whatnot, and the players, they're just freakish athletes. And you're dealing with older men that have to run up and down the field with them and hopefully have, 20/20 eyesight, whatever it is, even if it's laser corrected or wearing contacts and whatnot. And you're still not going to get it right. So there's going to be a human error element to it, just the same as a quarterback like Ben throwing the ball to Antonio Brown. It's not going to be perfect every single time. And so I'm okay with replay. I'm just not so, like you said, frame by frame, slowing it down. The game doesn't happen in slow motion. So when you're looking for things that you can't dispute, whether somebody grabbed a face mask or pulled a jersey like holding, like something like that, it's indisputable. It happened versus well, we're trying to figure out if this person's arm is really out there, or if they arm barred or something like, that type of stuff is more judgment stuff that you'll never be able to get correct on video review.
No, I agree. Well, so moving on a little bit, just a lot of things that are happening now as we're in the off season and the draft's coming up, and obviously I shouldn't call it off season. We're in free agent frenzy season where was this player going to do this? Are they going to trade this player?
Not if you're the Steelers.
Yeah, I know. And before we get into a couple of the big things that I've been talking about today, just a couple of thoughts I was having with a couple of the coaches' comments that I just, it's kind of bugging me and only bugging me because I'm still surprised people do this. And one was of the Browns and Coach Jackson basically saying Tyrod Taylor is our guy. There is no competition, blah, blah, blah. And then Doug Peterson and the Philly did the same thing with Wentz, which I understand how awesome Wentz was last year until he got hurt. But their Super Bowl winning MVP back on the bench is still sitting there, and it's like they both said this is their team. And to me, Philly, that's the Philadelphia team. It's not Carson's team. And just to say that, and then Cleveland, oh my gosh, they're never going to win any games with their mentality. But then to just name a player as the quarterback now, not a stopgap until you've even seen him on the field with your players. What is up with that? You tell the players to stop talking on social media. You want to tell the coaches, stop, zip it.
Oh, I think I brought this up with Brian, or Brian brought it up. We were talking about the same thing and how we're waiting for Hugh Jackson to jump into the lake still for making, these bold statements before. He has backed himself into such a corner with some of this stuff already. I joked, I just wanted to make this public for all of our listeners. We were talking about this internally. And I'm somewhat kidding about this, and then I'm not. So I want to bring this out and just say, what happens when they signed Drew Stanton? Okay, that's one other thing. So they got Tyrod Taylor, they got Drew Stanton, they got picks 1 and 4, and more than likely they should get one of the top, if not who they feel is the top quarterback in this draft, unless they somehow screw this up, and they could trade that. We'll talk about that in a second. So, okay, you're going to say Tyrod Taylor's your starter, and then what happens when he's not doing so hot? And then presumably the rookie is going to be the inactive guy sitting on the bench as the third quarterback, basically our Josh Dobbs, except for the fact of he'll have a very much higher pedigree than Josh Dobbs ever did coming out of college. And there's going to be people that are going to be upset because if this team isn't competitive, and they win only 1 or 2 games, and they're 6 games into the season out of 16, and all of a sudden there's a bye week. Hugh Jackson's on his way out, and I was joking. I said Todd Haley, who has former head coaching experience, by the way, with the Kansas City Chiefs, could step in as an interim coach, and then that's when all hell's going to break loose, because then it's going to be like, well, this guy's not going to sit on the bench anymore. We're going to have the rookie quarterback come out there, or some mix of Stanton, or you're going to have Tyrod Taylor get hurt. You see quarterbacks get hurt. How important is a backup? It's just, you're just setting yourself up for failure instead of just saying, hey, we're going to let these guys go in, be competitive in camp, and we're gonna go with the best guy. They don't even know who their other quarterback is yet. In Hugh Jackson, I want to call him a clown almost, because it is a circus up there in Cleveland. He's already naming his starting quarterback in March. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I just can't believe. I mean, Mike Pettit, what did he win? 6 games in 2 years, and he was let go.
Yeah,
and and it's like this guy 1 game in 2 years, and the fans have now started having parties for the losing seasons. I mean, and parades. And, and then there was did you hear about I heard it on NFL Network on the radio. I guess a bunch of the former Browns coaches got together for dinner.
Yeah.
They had their own dinner meeting, and they I think that's really funny because, the room was full because of how they go through coaches. But I mean, Hugh Jackson, his days have to be numbered, but I personally think they picked up Haley because what you said, that he's got that head coaching experience. He's to me the backup plan. And I think as much as I think he was done with his time in Pittsburgh at 5 years, and obviously Ben's got new life now, and he's pretty excited about wanting to stay, 3 years now that his offensive coordinator switched. I think Haley probably would do a decent job there compared to what others have done.
Possibly, and I mean, you got to consider too some of the other guys they've just let out of their house. I mean, Kyle Shanahan, head coach now for the 49ers, and you see how he's already turning that around because he couldn't handle the madness there. I mean, they had Norv Turner, who was a great offensive coordinator, has worked just about everywhere in the league. You get Pat Shurmur, who's now the head coach with the New York Giants. I mean, it's just a laundry list of people who have been burned, and I don't think it's going to stop just yet. Usually your head coach and quarterback are joined at the hip, and I just don't see how Hugh Jackson I'm still trying to think of this too. I mean, they still have Kevin Hogan and Cody Kessler, and they just traded away Kaiser, who they drafted in the second round last year. I mean, it's still just the same stuff. I don't understand why bringing Drew Stanton on. Why do you feel he's going to be any more of an upgrade over Kessler or Hogan, or what they're going to do with their picks? And I don't think too highly of Tyrod Taylor either. I mean, he's not terrible. He's maybe average at best. But, I mean, it's no worse than what they had with Josh McCown. They should have just kept McCown when they had him.
Well, now, do you think there's any possibility now that it's been announced, and I'll kind of lean into what we're talking about, that Johnny Manziel will throw at Texas Tech and all 32 teams will be there? Do you think that they would pick him back up again?
Texas A&M. I don't know.
Texas A&M.
Yeah, he was just down at San Diego, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He was here. Yeah.
Yeah, in your neck of the woods, throwing the ball, and the Browns showed up. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It's different.
That's what I was thinking. That's what I was wondering, because one of my friends is down there, and she's like, the Browns coaches or the scouts here. I'm like, yeah, I heard that. I wonder if they, would think, well, he was here once, he knows our scheme, he knows this, and he wants to get back to the
none of
league.
that's the same.
I don't know.
None of that's the same. Not even the color orange that he wore. I don't think.
It's pretty weird.
It's a whole different staff, with the exception of Jimmy Haslam at the top. I mean, the constant change. I'm going to ask you this before you move forward, since we're talking about the Browns and we're talking a little bit of the AFC North. This was Brian and I's discussion last week. Do you think the Steelers are better now than they were at the end of the season last year? Or maybe after the draft, do you feel they'll be more improved in areas? I understand Ryan Shazier is an asterisk, but all else considering, what do you think about some of the moves?
I think some of the moves have been very good. I think that some people are calling some of these moves stopgaps, and I'm thinking that I call them a little bit more respectable than pedestrian. I think they definitely have got some guys that can make plays that can. I mean, I was going back and looking at some tape on some of the guys that they just picked up, and I'm thinking, you know what, we've got some things going on here. I think that they've cut a lot of the older guys, with Mitchell and Gay was let go, right?
Yeah, Gay. 22 and 23, so 21, of course, announced that he's moving to his jersey to 23 now, being Joe Hayden.
Yeah. So I think because we have a more focused group, and I think that's going to be a big deal. My concern is still Bell. I think that he brings so much drama right now to the team and so much uncertainty as far as how we get started to start the season. It's driving me kind of crazy. But, I think it's hard because you've got this really special player, this really great running back, wide receiver, combo. But he's just trying to set a bar instead of just signing and taking care of himself. And he's already set the bar last year with his tag. And now this year he's at 14. Which is almost twice what the next running back's getting. And he's just not understanding that, you need to make a decision. And if you get hurt and you don't sign it till July, you're out of luck. But I would hate to see him not be at camp. It was a slow start for him. Just working out is a problem. And so, and to answer to your question, are we better? I don't think yet. As soon as I see what happens with him, I think that makes a difference. I think mentally we're better with Haley gone and with Ben refocused on a little bit more long term. So yeah, that part I think is great. When they know that Ben's going to be there and longer than a year and there's no retirement discussion anymore, I think that the players, it just sets a tone. And so I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, we had talked about whether quarterback was a possibility in the draft, and if you just change the word or change the letter Q to R, and RB may even be available in the first round. It's, if all these quarterbacks go, you never know who might be available, and Bell's replacement may be in the draft, and it's pretty deep with running backs again this season as it was last year when you see guys like Kareem Hunt and Alvin Kamara have the kind of seasons that they had. And they're not even at the very top of their draft class.
Well, you have to laugh at the meeting that's coming up. I guess the dinner they're going to have with somebody last name Juice with a G.
Yeah,
I thought that was kind of funny. I was like, oh, there's a little mental shout out going. So you just want to go be a rap star? Huh? Okay. We're going to have a couple of running back meetings. And by the way, there's another Juice out there too, Le'Veon. So and you heard the quote that Mike Tomlin made at the owners' meeting. They said, oh. Because they comment, oh, Le'Veon said this, Bell said this. And he's like, yeah, well, he says he wants to be a full-time rap star, too. He says lots of things. So, it's almost like Coach says these kids nowadays.
So. Yeah, I know. Well, at least it's not Fortnite. So.
Oh, my gosh. It's funny that you say that because that's all I hear now with all the players playing that and everything. And as you know, my daughter's a teacher and a sub, and she's like, my high school kids are playing Fortnite. They need to move on. These are men, so it's just funny to me.
Yeah.
When I hear some of this stuff.
By the way, Darius Geis, I know it's spelled like juice. So
is it Geis? Oh,
yeah,
okay,
yeah. It's here or there. I mean, I butcher a lot of the draft names. Trust me. I'm going through. We're working on the ebook that should be out shortly, and I'm just making sure that things are capitalized. And there was a name. I think it was a guy, a defensive lineman or an edge rusher, and I'm just like, oh dear Lord, I have no idea how to say that. And you hear everybody. You're not. Trust me. This is no knock on you, Terry.
No, I'm glad.
I hear the guys on the radio butcher it too. So it's just Martavius, for example.
Yeah, I hate. As I was just gonna say, I hate it when they butcher Martavius names. So I'm glad you clarified. I think the funny thing though is that I put that out on Twitter about Geis. And I got a lot of likes and retweets on that. They're like, this is awesome. So I just, I think that we're talking about some egos here. And, Bell is a big one. What is it? Adamakin Sue. He's, he turns down Raiders and then basically says, I'm not going to visit there. And then he says, it's between the Rams and Jets. And the Rams are like, well, we haven't made an offer yet. That was really funny. They're like, we haven't made an offer yet. And then Jets are like, oh, by the way, we're rescinding our offer. Yeah. And so I'm like, your position kind of weak in there, bud. And then you've got the Giants with the new coach, new GM, and basically saying, yeah, we're ready to deal, OBJ. Yeah,
they said. Offer. Yeah, they said anyone's on the table when it comes to trades, and they're trying to clean up some of the mess. They had Jerry Reese and, of course, Ben McAdoo. And, this right. One of the weird things is, like, how you let Tom Coughlin out the building. He leaves and goes and becomes a front office guy with Jacksonville, and you saw what he did in 1 year down there. Why didn't they just promote him underneath Jerry Reese, or is, like, the next best thing? Let's see what happens this year, and then, we could fire Reese and promote Coughlin to GM or something like that. Or
and the thing that people are, and I hear people all the time saying, oh, well, they have to take, because they got the second overall pick, and I believe they're going to take Barkley, Saquon Barkley, a running back, because they need one. But people are like, oh, they need to take a quarterback. The one thing people don't get is that with Eli Manning, he's a year older than Ben, but he's the only game he's ever not started is the one that McAdoo sat him down for Geno.
Yeah,
and so this guy is never injured. He's never hurt. He looks like he's 14 years old. And so he's got to be doing something to take care of his body. I see him playing another 3-4 years, and he's never, ever, ever mentioned retirement. So, regardless of what the commitment is on the Giants side, which with what's out there, I would think it's pretty high, I just can't see them taking a quarterback with their first pick. I mean, maybe to sit behind him if they're, but I just can't see it. I can see us drafting a quarterback if Dobbs isn't what they think is the answer in the future to sit behind Ben. But if they really like a guy, and I know they like Rudolph, but these egos right now with Sue and Bell and now OBG,
everybody's doing that.
It's just crazy. He's just so, I think the word they use is nobody's untouchable. I love that.
I try not to mention Odell Beckham Jr. by acronym because I always want to. I always want to refer to the rapper ODB, and I did it again. And there was a pro wrestler that went by a similar name too, a female wrestler years ago. So I get them all tongue tied, and I just avoid saying it. I just say Beckham, I just say Odell, and I don't get myself in hot water. But yeah, when we had. Last summer, I had some folks over from MBK Sports Management, sports agents, or they work within the sports agency on, and we had a discussion about players holding out, and basically it's the only recourse a player has when it comes to any type of contract discussions. It's not to say it's all one-sided, but I mean you sign the contract and then you're held to a certain standard. You got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, and now all of a sudden it's like, what do you do if you have a year left? Well. It's like, I think you hurt yourself and your team by not being there, which I think is something Alejandro Villanueva understood. And he understood that, anyone is replaceable. It's just a matter of, can you get the same thing or similar and at what cost? And I think that's what you're looking at with somebody like Geis with Bell. And that's what, I would hope that Bell, I kind of saw this because the tag money is guaranteed, but I don't see any reason why he shouldn't just sign the tag and come to camp, because the Steelers may still do a deal with him the following season, or they could still rip this thing up and extend them and do whatever. I don't personally, I don't understand it. I could see both sides of this, and we've it's a broken record as far as Bell's concerned, but you have Beckham doing the same thing. I think he knows he wants on it out of New York too. It's a new coach. I think it's funny you mentioned Eli and everything. He never missed a game, and you don't hear him say retirement. You don't hear him say much of anything, to be completely honest.
Really don't.
And he's in the New York market. He's in the largest media market in the world, and Odell thrives for that type of attention, and he's been hurt, and he's had a little bit of off-field scuffles, especially with the kicking net. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, we were talking about this earlier, and Eric was discussing with us too. It's like, oh man, if it were like the Steelers, can you imagine him on there? And I was like, well, I don't know what I want to add him. I mean, sometimes too many combustible elements isn't a good thing. You already got Bell, you already got Antonio Brown. There's no way they could afford Beckham anyway. And
and I think that would mess with Juju's mojo. I think Juju is our kind of backseat star to AB. And I think that Martavis is going to show up and have a good year. So that, because if he is not staying for that fifth year, I think is because he was off a year, and he's going to be traded or he's going to hit free agency. I believe that this is his year to either say, keep me because I want a long-term deal. If you guys are willing to, I've learned my lesson and look how great I am. But I think he could be a starter anywhere if he has a really good year. So I think we've got a good core group. And I think we're going to pick up a wide receiver in the draft. They always do. Probably around the 4th, 5th round, I would think.
I'm shaking my head. I'm shaking my head.
We got needs other places first, but I would say 4th, 5th round, I could see them doing it.
Yeah, it's deep. The receiver group is one of the deeper groups. The running backs are fairly decent depth there too. The edge rushers are not. So there's different decisions. I mean, they're talking about the 5th-year option with Bud Dupree, which I think has to be done. I know a lot of people. I agree. I've been banging the table about how Dupree and Watt are used differently. If you look at them, their statistics are fairly similar. Each has their own type of splash plays and whatnot. Maybe less with Dupree last season, but they're dropped into coverage. They're top 5 as far as those type of edge rushers or outside linebackers that are dropped into coverage because they're the type of athletes they are. And those type of athletes aren't in the draft this year, and I don't think there's going to be any free agents the following year that are going to fill in for a Bud Dupree role. So I think they do the 5th-year option. They keep him around. He'll be around for at least 2 more seasons so they can evaluate, because it's not always about the player and can you upgrade over that player. It's, well, if we don't have this player, then what? What do we have in the wings? And they don't.
Yeah, I think with Bud Dupree too, I miss having a hard hitter, and he's a hard hitter. And I think when he comes up the middle, or he gets off that edge, or he does something, he goes after that quarterback. I just keep remembering what he did in Miami.
Matt Moore.
And that guy, he can just kill somebody, and we don't have that kind of player that does that right now. So, well, except for Juju, but he got in trouble. But I think that
he's playing on the wrong side of the ball.
He's playing on the wrong side of the ball, exactly. But I think we need somebody like that just to have some fear. We need somebody who they fear. And with Shazier, they don't fear Hayward. They basically with him, they know that he's going to get his arm up, he's going to get his hand on the ball, he is going to sack. But he's somebody that causes a little bit of confusion, and he's just always got his eyes on the field. But somebody coming after you and hitting you, that's Bud Dupree to me, and I hope they do pick up his option.
Yeah, I definitely think of that Miami game because he had a great game that day, and even though he got penalized and later fined for nearly decapitating poor Matt Moore, but you know who the other guy is too that strikes some fear into the opponents, a defensive guy, a newer guy, quite frankly, who's hopefully going to be around longer than just one more season, and that's Mike Hilton. And I actually have a quote from him, and my fat thumbs, I'm trying to bring it up here, of course, and it's just not working for me. Here we go. I got Hilton, and I got the little loading spinning wheel. He said something along the same effect, which would be great to close out this episode with, if I ever get it up here on the screen. Oh, man. He said something about fear or intimidation, and yeah.
I like Mike Hilton. He's got that Hilton train. I'm on board. He's got that smile where I think it's like he looks like he's going to be like all nice and everything, and then, oh boy, here he comes.
I got it.
He's hungry. Yeah, what does he say?
I feel like my threat is making opposing offenses a little worried. And that's just because of the way he was utilized last season, blitzing, and that's part of the whole scheme here. So the Steelers, they're evolving. They are evolving, and I like where they're at. A little bit of potpourri episode today. We didn't really have any type of true agenda. There's not a whole lot of news other than Kevin Colbert, the Steelers general manager, has said they're going to put these contract talks with Le'Veon Bell off to the side just so we don't have this back and forth of, is the number closer? Is he going to show up at camp? He just said, we're putting that on hold for free agency and the draft. And I think that was smart because basically what they're saying now is no more distractions. We're just getting down to the business of building the best football team we can. And I believe they're in a very good position to have maybe even a better team in 2018 this season. So, Terry, thanks for joining me again.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, everybody, for being part of our grab bag today. We kind of just put some things out there that are in the news. So this is our grab bag news day.
Yeah, I know you're about to say you agree, too, but we are up against it.
I do. Yeah, no, I agree only because I think that you know what? It's in his court now. It's like sign your tag, don't sign your tag. You've got till July. We've got other business at hand. So
absolutely. So, all right, folks. Well, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything otherwise, keep sending them our way. We're going to start digging into the dirt that is the draft. And don't forget to visit our website at steelcityunderground.com/March of Dimes as well for that contest in the autographed Troy Polamalu jersey and how you can enter to win that. Until next time, my name's Joe. Her name's Terry. Be safe, be good. We'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.